Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order, and I'm going to remind people that this meeting will be recorded and made available. I want staff and family members and council members for the nice little send-off that they gave Ron and I this morning. I know that online people were not able to be there, but you are certainly able to be here now. So it was lovely, and Ron and I both very, very much appreciate it. We wish the new council well. They have their work cut out for them, as do all politicians in this stage. But I know that collectively they are up to it, and that staff will be there to guide them and support them as they travel on their way. So Ron and I both wish you well, and thank everybody for attending our gathering this morning. It was greatly appreciated. Now, if we can have the roll call, please.
Thank you. Mayor Clarkson, are you present?
I am.
Deputy Mayor Windover?
Present.
Councillor Armstrong?
Present.
Councillor Franzen?
Present.
Councillor Lambshead?
Present.
For staff, we have Donna Taggart, CAO Treasurer.
Present.
Evan Grieger, Director of Public Works.
Present.
Barb Waldron, Director of Building and Planning, CBO.
Present.
Adele Arbor, Planner.
Present.
Ann Ruth, Deputy Clerk.
Present.
Sarah Dillamarter, Junior Planner.
Present.
And Jesse Clark, Director of Corporate Services. Clerk is present.
Thank you. Now I'm going to read the land acknowledgement and moment of reflection. We respectfully acknowledge the Trent Lakes and Peterborough County are located on the Treaty 20 Michi-Saugi territory and the traditional territory of the Michi-Saugi and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nation, which include Alderville, Beausoleil, Curve Lake, Georgina Island, Hiawatha, Rama, and Scugog Island First Nations. Trent Lakes respectively acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. On behalf of council, staff, and the residents of Trent Lakes, I would like to express our heartfelt condolences on the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and to our new King Charles III and royal family, and thank Her Majesty for devoting her life to the service of the Commonwealth and you can have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to remind council members of their obligation to clear any pecuniary interests that they may have. And if there are any other public service announcements that you'd like to make at this time? Seeing none. Could we have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Deputy Mayor Windover, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor? Motion is carried. Adoption of the minutes for the regular council meeting of October the 4th. Motion, please. Councillor Franzen, Councillor Carroll. Councillor, that works. Committees and boards. Yes. All in favor? Yes. Whoever you are. That's not the one I normally mess up on. Committees and boards. Economic Development Advisory Committee, October the 17th. Library Board, September the 9th. Parks, Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee, October the 13th. Police Services Board, October the 27th. Motion to receive these minutes, please. Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Lambshead, all in favor. Just a brief overview on the Police Services Board. Our finances, we actually did a little bit better with them this year. Not much, but at least we're not going in the wrong direction. Liaison reports for council boards and committees. Any reports from Economic Development, Parks, Police Services Board, Library Board? Hearing none. Statutory public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act. We need a motion to suspend the regular meeting. Motion of Deputy Mayor Windover and Councillor Franzen. All in favor? Motion has carried. Sarah, can we ask you to introduce file 22-28, please?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. This is a public meeting under Section 34 of the Planning Act to consider an amendment to the municipality zoning bylaw B 2014-070. A notice of public meeting for today's applications containing the prescribed information was circulated to all landowners within a 120-meter radius of the subject lands at least 20 days prior to this meeting, and a sign was posted on the subject land in accordance with the Planning Act. The notice was also mailed to all prescribed agencies, public bodies, and persons in accordance with regulations. Anyone wanting to be notified of any decision from today's public meeting must sorry, I'm reading an older script here, must inform the clerk and the method and manner to which they can appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal will be mailed to them. Please note that if a person does not send a written comment prior to the passing of the bylaw or make an oral submission at the public meeting, that person may not be entitled to appeal the decision.
Okay, do we have any members of the public that want to speak to this file?
I have the agent, Holly Richards Conley. I'm unmuting you now.
Hi, good afternoon. It's Holly. Can you hear me okay?
Yes?
I'm still recovering from the flu, so my voice is not very loud. Through you, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to go over a few of the important points that were outlined in the memo that was sent to council. We did move this house as far away from the water as we possibly could go. We had Peterborough Public Health out to the site to help us choose the least impactful location for the septic on this property, which was to the rear of the cottage, so away from the lake. But there was a culvert on that side of the property as well. So we kind of had to place the septic in a way that was as far away from the water as possible and the culvert. So the house ended up being 24 meters away from the water, not the 30 which is usually recommended. However, we also did get the environmental assessment completed as well to support the application, seeing as it was going to be closer than 30 meters to the water, which I believe a copy was also given to you in the memo. And then lastly, I just wanted to reiterate that we did have an archaeological assessment completed on June 1st, and the report has been filed with the ministry. We just haven't received the final confirmation back from them, which does take a while.
Okay, have we any comments from council?
Through you, Madam Mayor, may I present the file? I introduced the Planning Act and the policies surrounding that. I didn't read my preamble for the public meeting.
Sure.
So this is a public meeting for file number 22-28 to consider zoning bylaw amendment submitted by agent Holly Richards Conley on behalf of the property owners Dale Allen Warner and Patricia Laureen Warner for vacant lot located on Evergreen Way. The subject lands have a lot area of approximately 0.61 acres and a shoreline frontage of approximately 37 meters. The property is currently zoned shoreline residential private access. The applicant wishes to construct a dwelling with an attached garage having a total floor area of 315.81 square meters or 3,400 square feet. The floor area of the dwelling includes a covered lake-facing deck with a floor area of approximately 11.9 square meters and a screened-in room with a floor area of approximately 16.7 square meters. The applicant has provided an environmental impact study in support of the proposed application. The proposed dwelling would be 23.88 meters from the regulated high water mark, which was supported in the applicant's submitted environmental impact study. Additionally, the proposed dwelling would require minor relief from the interior side yard setback from 4.5 meters to 3.64 meters. The proposed dwelling also requires relief from the setback from the private right-of-way to permit the dwelling's 9.95 meter proposed setback, where the permitted setback would be 12 meters. There's a planning report on the agenda from the municipality's external planning consultant, Chris Jones. Chris's report identifies that the proposed amendment is generally consistent with the provincial policy statement and represents infill development as identified in the growth plan. The municipality has received 3 comments from the public concerning the proposed amendment. The first is from Peter and Tammy Gout, who support the proposed amendment. The second is from Lisa and Larry Bowen, who wish to remain neutral but have expressed grievances. And the third and final public comment is from Richard and Lori Lyle, the next door neighbors of the subject lands. They do not support the proposed amendment, citing that the dwelling will be located too close to their home, the lake, and that their view of the lake will be obstructed. The Curve Lake First Nations also provided a comment requesting that an archaeological assessment be completed for the area that will be disturbed, and that a First Nation liaison be on site for the archaeological assessment. Chris notes in his report that an archaeological assessment has already been undertaken. However, the municipality is not in receipt of it at this time. Further, if any members of the public do not register with the clerk indicating their intent to make an oral submission but would like to do so at this time, please use the raise a hand feature so we are able to promote you in order for you to make an oral submission. Thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to ask for comments from council. Councilor Ramsay?
In Chris's report, there was several things that he was asking for, items A to E. I'm wondering if we're in receipt of any of those. I mean, the archaeological study's been done, but we haven't got it in hand. There's also like a site plan agreement, considering all of the shoreline restoration thing. And there was also an MECP letter. I don't know if we have any of them in hand.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the best of my knowledge at this time, the only item in recommendation 2 that has been fulfilled is a site visit being undertaken by the external planning consultant.
Anyone else? Councilor Armstrong?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I first read this file, the question I had was, why can't the building be located within the regulated setbacks? And I think you answered it with regard to the water yard in saying that there's a culvert there. But I'm wondering why the other setbacks cannot be adhered to. And if it's also a culvert problem, or if there are other restrictions based on the topography that prevent that.
The agent is on the line. I'm not sure if Holly wants to answer those questions or.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can answer those questions.
Go ahead.
The road Evergreen Way actually, so the one setback, which is hold on, I'm just going to bring them up in front of me so I can address each one. So the water yard setback, we obviously can't meet due to the culvert to the rear of the property and the recommendation of Peterborough Public Health to put the septic where we are putting it. And that also brings us to the setbacks from the private road. Evergreen Way circles around this property and comes down the side of it. So the reduction from 12 meters to 9.95 meters. On that side, that's where we had to put the septic. And so it pushed the house slightly to the opposite side of the property, which brings us to the entire interior side yard setback reduction from 4.5 meters to 3.64. It pushed the house a little bit towards that side yard. So we were a little bit too close to the private road on the one side, and then the interior side yard setback on the other, just because of the positioning of the septic. So basically the water yard setback, the interior side yard setback, and the setback from the private road were all sort of based around where we were allowed to place the septic on this property.
Yes.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question through you, Madam Mayor. So I guess the only option you had was potentially to reduce the footprint of the actual building. So was that even a consideration in the discussions?
The house itself is not encroaching on the interior side yard setback. It was only the garage. And in order to be able to fit a 2-car garage on this property, we looked at reducing the size of it, but we're limited to sort of what an average 2-car garage would look like and what you could fit in. And given that there's no other, this is a vacant property and no other storage sort of options, we were sort of left with an already limited 2-car garage size. So yes, we did talk about it, and the footprint of itself of this house with the attached garage is not an overly large house.
I think, in my view, this is typical of the development that we get in these areas where the lots are irregular, and irregular decisions and whatever have to be made sometimes in order to make these things work. And I think that's one of the areas going forward that we have somewhat of a conflict with the county, and that they are used to more dealing with cut and dried pieces of property where these are anything but. So in my view, in order to make good use of the only developable land we've got, that type of flexibility is not out of the question. Yes.
I'm also concerned about the footprint of the house. It seems fairly large for a small lot. And I don't think I can support this application.
Yes.
Well, in Chris Jones's report, he's asking for a deferral for the site plan agreement, shoreline restoration plan. Is our staff actually asking for that deferral as well?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. That'll be in the business arising. Will be where staff will recommend our recommendations.
So at this point, then we don't do any more with this. We wait until we get further along. Is that my understanding? Thank you. Official Plan Amendment 60. Adele, would you like to introduce this file, please?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. This is a public meeting under Section 22 of the Planning Act to consider an official plan amendment to the municipality's official plan. Proposed official plan amendment number 60 is a municipally initiated amendment affecting all lands within the municipality of Trent Lakes. A notice of public meeting containing the prescribed information was advertised in the newspapers and posted on websites jointly with the County of Peterborough in accordance with the Planning Act. The notice was also mailed to all prescribed agencies, public bodies, and persons in accordance with the regulations. The draft official plan amendment was also available on the municipal website for review. Anyone wanting to be notified of any decision from today's public meeting regarding official plan amendment 60 must notify the clerk or planning staff, and the notice of decision will be mailed to them, setting out the method and manner in which appeals may be made to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Please note that if a person does not send a written comment prior to the approval of the official plan amendment or make an oral submission at the public meeting, this person may not be entitled to appeal the decision. The proposed official plan amendment is a housekeeping amendment in nature and adds language to the current official plan to address and clarify legislative changes made by the More Homes for Everyone Act, enacted in 2022, and it's also known as Bill 109. The purpose of this act was to identify ways to address the housing crisis and have more homes built. The new provincial policies allow municipalities to determine complete application requirements for site plans and zoning bylaw amendments, and sets out requirements for consultation and provides authority for delegation to staff for minor zoning bylaw amendments. Planning staff initially provided a report to council in June of this year summarizing the various changes resulting from Bill 109 regarding zoning bylaw amendments, site plan, and combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendments. The most significant change to the Planning Act was the refund of application fees to applicants who did not receive a decision within the legislated timelines. This is intended to speed up processing time for these applications. This next slide identifies processing timelines that were changed and refund provisions which would be calculated on a graduated basis. A 50% refund, a 75% or 100% refund would apply to those applications made on or after January 1st, 2023, and that did not meet the specified timelines. The legislation is designed to encourage faster review and approval of applications. However, processing of applications must still follow legislation and the review process. And the review process includes notification and commenting period. There are specific timelines within the Planning Act that staff must follow. There is a process of consultation with the public, agencies, and First Nations, public meeting, and then peer review of supporting studies. Bill 109 does not account for higher volumes of applications and increased complexity. It doesn't consider staffing resources that each municipality has. And the applicant response times for peer review processes and questions raised regarding more information that may be required from the initial study that was undertaken. And also Bill 109 doesn't consider council schedule. There are application fees or a cost recovery mechanism to cover staff time and resources for review of the application. Refunds would require changes to budgets. So having said that, we looked at site plan control, and municipalities must appoint an authorized person for site plan control approval. The municipality of Trent Lakes has already done this by bylaw B 2022-072, and this was passed in June of this year. Requirements for pre-consultation and complete applications. We do have a bylaw in place for that. As a result of Bill 109 and our official plan amendment 60, we will be making changes. Once this amendment is approved by the county, we will make changes to our pre-consultation bylaw, which would include the requirements for complete applications. There's also a delegation of authority for minor amendments, temporary use bylaws, and lifting of a hold. This hasn't been done. These Planning Act changes occurred through Bill 13 in 2021, and we are adding them in our official plan amendment to ensure that our official plan supports faster application processing times wherever possible. The County of Peterborough is also amending their current OP, just like Trent Lakes, in advance of the new county OP. As you know, the county OP, which Trent Lakes is now going to be a part of, is at the ministry for approval. We don't know when that county OP will be approved. So this amendment is adding language to address provincial legislative changes in our current document. The new policies give local municipalities the ability to delegate approvals to authorized staff and to determine complete application requirements. It provides clarity that a complete application can include peer review of supporting studies, updates to site plan policies to reflect language in the Planning Act, particularly around pre-consultation and complete application. A public meeting notice for today's meeting was provided in conjunction with the county's notice and was advertised in newspapers and websites. A complete copy of the draft amendment was also included on our website. There is a planning report on the agenda today that provides further details as to the policies that will be added to the official plan. The report identifies that the leading cause in that the municipality's review timelines tend to extend beyond those outlined in the Planning Act is the professional peer review process, which is out of the control of the municipality. Planning staff within the County of Peterborough have agreed that complete peer reviews of supporting documentation submitted should become part of a complete application submission. As there are concerns with the timing of the approved new county official plan after January 1st, 2023, when these changes become legislated, Trent Lakes will be passing this official plan amendment 60 to our current bylaw. So we will have the requirements in place in order to be able to enforce the legislative changes that are before us. If any members of the public did not register with the clerk indicating their intent to make an oral submission, but would like to at this time, please use the raise a hand feature so we are able to promote you in order for you to make an oral submission. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, do we see any hands from the public or any? Jesse, are you seeing anything that I'm not?
I'm not seeing any. No.
Okay, does council have any comments? Yes, Councillor Ramsay.
Yeah, in the document, it says you can ask for a peer review, and then a couple times I think it says you will ask for a peer review. I just want clarification on that, because that can delay the process considerably, because those are out of your timeline. So if you have to have a peer review and the assessment done before it's a complete application, that's going to add months to it.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct. As part of submitting a complete application for a zoning bylaw amendment, if there are supporting studies that require peer reviews, we will ask for the peer reviews during our pre-consultation and before an applicant submits an application to the municipality. That peer review must be in hand as part of their complete application. And that way we are in control of the timelines within the Planning Act in which we can process the application.
Yes, Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, if I may, through you, Madam Mayor, kind of build on that question. Which supporting studies require a peer review, and how is that? Is that part of the Planning Act? Where does that regulation or requirement come from?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it is a requirement that municipalities put in place through a zoning or through a bylaw that we detail what's required for a complete application. So peer reviews, if we have an environmental site assessment done for a property, we may get that peer reviewed if we have some questions and, you know, we have some difficulty in maybe seeing if the recommendations are something that can be supported. You see oftentimes in our zoning bylaw amendments, we include a site plan agreement that includes the recommendations of an EIS. And sometimes those EISs require peer review, and there's some back and forth sometimes that goes between the two consultants where there are questions asked of the original study, and all that takes time. So what we're trying to do, so we don't have to refund any kind of application fees during this process, we're putting all the necessary requirements up front. So someone, when they apply for a zoning amendment, they have all the documentation. We don't have to ask for a peer review after we've got their application, because we don't have any control on the length of time that will take.
Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you, through Madam. Thanks, Adele. And I do understand the intent of this is to make sure you have all the required documentation before the clock starts. So that makes sense to me. But I'm thinking if I'm an individual and I'm applying for a zoning bylaw amendment, how do I know? So I submit an EIS to you. How do I know whether that is going to require a peer review? Or I submit another kind of study. How do I know that that's going to require a peer review? Presumably I'd like to know what it is I'm going to have to submit to you in order for you to deem it a complete application.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's a very good question because we have a process called a pre-consultation. So prior to any application being submitted to the municipality, planning staff arrange a meeting with the applicant, and we have a list of various studies that may be appropriate for this proposal to go forward to some sort of application, be it a site plan, official plan amendment, zoning bylaw. We do have a list of studies that may be required. So during the pre-consultation, we may say, well, this is a commercial development. We feel it's necessary that you do a traffic analysis. So we'll check that box off that we need a traffic study to accompany your application. And then we'll identify that based on whatever road it's on, that we will require a peer review of that study. Or if EIS is required, they'll know right from the beginning when we do the pre-consultation before they've even submitted their application what studies are required.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Adele, when the government's talking about introducing housing for people who are hard to house, and we are building at a rapid pace storage units. Most of these storage units are probably suitable for small housing. Is there any chance of allowing some of these people to convert them over to housing? I know our grandson rents a place downtown Toronto, 600 square feet, happy to get it. So we have been used to 900, 1,000, 1,200 square feet. Obviously, that's not the new norm. Is there any chance that a person who has got these storage units could apply for tiny houses?
Through you, Madam Mayor, typically if someone has developed some storage units on a particular property, it's zoned for that, and it would be a commercial or an industrial zoning for that piece of property. So if they were going to introduce some housing on that property, they probably would have some sort of planning approvals, either through an official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, site plan, and they would have to meet any kind of requirements through the Ontario Building Code. So I don't know that they could easily be converted, but certainly if they wanted to take those units off the property, they could zone and designate that property for residential, potentially. It all depends where that land is. If that land is all surrounded by industrial lands, you're not going to support an island of residential use surrounded by industrial. So each case is looked on its own merit. So if that was to happen, we would have a pre-consultation and advise the individual on what's required in terms of studies and what kind of approvals they would require. And we would also get our building department involved if there should be questions on the Ontario Building Code.
But I guess what I'm hearing is it's not impossible. Like, I guess what I'm thinking of is if you take a look at the units that are at the end of 6 Foot Bay Road, they've already got housing over top of those units. So then they've got 6 of the rental units in the bottom, and then they have housing on the top. That could easily, probably with the zoning, easily be converted. Anyway, just a thought, because we are certainly building these storage units at a rapid pace. Any other questions from council? Okay. Moving on. We need a motion to reconvene the regular meeting. Deputy Mayor Windover and Councillor Franson, all in favor. Motion is carried. Now we're going to do the business arising from the statutory meeting, and Sarah, junior planner, are going to speak to the zoning bylaw 22-28.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. There was a public meeting held for file number 22-28, Warner. At this time, staff recommending that council receives the report from the external planning consultant, Chris Jones, and defers making a decision on the application until the following items have been done. 1. A site visit has been undertaken by Chris Jones. 2. A shoreline restoration plan has been submitted and peer reviewed if necessary. 3. A site plan agreement has been executed to implement recommendations of the EIS in the above-mentioned shoreline restoration plan. 4. The archaeological assessment has been submitted. And 5. The MECP letter has been submitted. Thank you.
Okay, can we have a motion, please? Councillor Lamson,
I'd like to receive the report and defer making a decision until all of those items are received.
and the seconder would be Councillor Armstrong. All in favor? Motion has carried. Adele, you're going to speak to the official plan amendment 60. Changes
Yes.
to Bill 9.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Clarkson. There was a public meeting held today regarding proposed official plan amendment number 60. Planning staff are recommending the adoption of this amendment and that it be forwarded to the County of Peterborough for approval.
Thank you. Motion?
I support that motion.
Okay, Councillor Franzen, and seconded by Councillor Armstrong. All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, now we've got some presentations. We'll have the first one from Michael Torch, partner, Think Design regarding open spaces master plan update. Please, sir, unmute your audio and or share your camera and make your presentation. You will have 20 minutes. We'll ask council the whole questions until after the end of the presentation. Are you there, Michael?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
I'm not sure if I can turn on my camera, but I will proceed. I don't think, yeah. Oh, there we go. All right. Is that okay? I see that there's some flickering on my end, so.
Yeah, I
Do
see
you see
flickering.
flickering?
You're going to give us a headache.
Oh. I was giving myself one.
Not your report.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure what that was. So I guess you'll just have to look at Stacy maybe while I present. So. All right, so thank you very much. My name is Mike Tucker. I'm a partner with Think Design, and I'm joined by Stacy Zoneveld,
Hello.
and she's available to answer any questions that we may have or you may have at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to try to keep this into about 10 to 15 minutes, and should be a fairly brief presentation. So if you let me get through it, and then we can deal with questions at the end. So next slide, please. So today I'm going to cover the purpose of the project, our workflow, work plan and schedule, the work completed to date, the work that's currently in progress, and next steps. Next slide, please. So we're the purpose of the project, we're building on the 2021 Parks and Recreation and Culture Master Plan, and we want to realize a municipal-wide connected open space trail network. And we're identifying recommended improvements to parks, trails, beaches, and boat launches. And we want to provide a detailed and realistic implementation strategy. And finally, reinforce existing partnerships and identify potential new partnerships. Next slide, please. So our primary deliverable is a 10-year master plan. However, I expect we will have some recommendations that won't be implementable in the short or medium term. So we will also identify recommendations that might be considered around or sort of beyond the 10-year timeframe. So our terms of reference includes not only trails, but as I mentioned, parks, beaches, and boat launches, with a focus on providing a connected trail network that links all of these assets. We will be identifying key projects and providing an estimated cost or budget for those recommendations, as well as we'll outline a strategy for implementing the recommendations. Next slide. So our work program is organized into 4 phases, and we are currently in phase 3. But I should point out that although we identify these as distinct phases, we really do feel that this is an iterative process. So various aspects of phases 1 and 2 will overlap with phases 3 and 4 as new information is gathered or additional stakeholders are identified, and then we'll circle back and consider those as part of the plan. So I'm just going to take you now through each phase, and then I'll talk to you about where we are in more detail. So next slide, please. So phase 1, which is pretty much complete, was, of course, project startup meeting, and we started this project, I believe it was back at the very end of May, so early June. We completed a document review and an inventory and assessment of trails and open spaces in Trent Lakes. Next slide. So phase 2 is our stakeholder engagement process. So this included the setup and management of the online platform, as well as meetings and interviews with different user groups and stakeholders. And the last point there was the online community survey. So this closed late last month, and I'll give more information on that in a moment. Next slide. So phase 3, which is the phase we're currently in, this is where we're developing the draft recommendations, cost estimates, the implementation strategy, and the preparation of the draft plan document. Now, this phase also includes presentations, which we completed last month to the Parks, Recreation, Culture Advisory Committee, and of course, today's presentation to Council. Now, unfortunately, due to the delay, a couple of delays just on the project and receiving mapping and our extending of the survey, we don't have draft recommendations for you today, as we had anticipated back when we prepared the proposal and responded to terms of reference. And they are still being developed, so we'll have to present those at the next council presentation. Next slide. And so phase 4, this is begin next month. So this will be the public open house. We'll present draft recommendations. They'll be posted online for feedback. And then we'll be preparing refinements to the plan to address any comments. And then we have a second presentation to council scheduled right now for the new year. Next slide. So this is a modified schedule from what we was proposed at the beginning of the project. So we have adjusted this now based on where we are at today. Our intent still, as you can see from the schedule, is to have the public open house in December and then wrap up the project in January. Next slide. So now I just wanted to talk to you about some of the work that we've completed to date. So just give you a little bit more detail. So we've prepared a background document, which includes the document review, inventory analysis, and I'll have a few slides of those in a moment. And then the second part is the summary of the stakeholder engagement. So that includes feedback from the online platform, interviews with stakeholder groups and staff and council. And then we have the online survey that just closed. So we're just finalizing that document. It's in a draft form. We call that what we've heard. Next slide. So this is just a list of documents we've reviewed thus far. And again, if any new sources of information are identified, we will incorporate, of course, into our review. Next slide. We also developed a series of maps and base plans, which we're using to identify opportunities and challenges for improvements to Trent Lakes open space network, as well as looking at the location of trails, boat launches, and parks, beaches, and other facilities. Next slide. We've also been looking at the regional trail network, so trails that are located outside of Trent Lakes, as well, of course, as trails that are running through Trent Lake. Next slide. And then these two maps basically are showing the location of parks, beaches, facilities, and the boat launches and water access. So we're really going to be looking at trying to connect these as much as possible through the trail system. Next slide. So the online engagement portal for the project has been live since the summer, since we started the project. It provides opportunities for the community to share their ideas and comment on the plan. This includes opportunities to post ideas as questions and find general information on the project. This is also where the draft plan will be posted after the public open house, so the community can download a draft of the plan and provide feedback. Next slide. So we have conducted 10 interviews with 12 individuals. So those individuals and their affiliation are listed here. Next slide. We've also completed 4 internal stakeholder meetings. Next slide. And 5 external meetings. And likely there might be a few more of these as we move through the process. So we did another interview with the Buckhorn Trails Association. So that was done just last month. They were identified as missing stakeholder, and there are a few others we're still trying to schedule at the moment. Next slide. On October 14th, our team did a tour with staff to visit a number of sites throughout Trent Lakes, and this helped us to better understand the community as a whole, as well as some specific sites and facilities and the challenges associated with those. Next slide. Online survey. This consisted of 23 questions, and this was posted for about 4 weeks, and it closed October 24th. We had originally proposed a shorter duration, but we did extend the deadline a couple of times to really help improve the response rate and get as much feedback as possible without delaying the end date of the project. We also posted some posters throughout Trent Lakes to help get more feedback, and that did seem to help give a bump in the numbers. Next slide. So we did have 128 responses to the survey. Just under 50% live in Harvey, 63% were over 60 years old, and 76% of respondents were permanent residents. Now on the right side there, you can see some examples of data we received from the survey. Respondents are interested in more parking, waste receptacle, washrooms, and playgrounds at parks. 59% don't use trails because they don't know enough about them. Most respondents want to use trails for walking, hiking, and snowshoeing. 45% cycle for recreational use. And the last point there, the majority of those who responded did not use boat launches. So we didn't get a lot of good input from users of the boat launches. So we will use that type of information to help in preparing the recommendations. So in progress right now, we've started to prepare those recommendations, and we're using all sources of information. So it's not just the survey that we use to prepare the recommendations. Of course, there were all the interviews we conducted, our background review on different documents, site visits, mapping analysis, and then of course our team's own professional experience with preparing master plans such as these. So again, those are in process right now, and we hope to have that together in the next couple of weeks. Next slide. So next steps, again, we're preparing the draft recommendations, public open house in December for public feedback, and there'll be a period there where we'll have input from the public. And then we're scheduled, or we're planning to come back to council in January to present those draft recommendations. So thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions or provide any clarification.
Hey, council, I'm just sure you're just chomping at the bit here. Councillor, what's your name? Carol.
Thank you.
I knew that, I was just wondering.
Thanks, Michael. I have two totally different questions. The first one is around the public open house in December. Terrible timing. I know that you don't have a lot of choice about that. But given we didn't have really good response on the survey, not anticipating we'll get good response in a December public open house, and we have a lot of people that aren't even here in December. So I'm wondering how effective that will be, and if there are any alternatives to having, I know it sounds like you're going to do it online as well as in person. But I guess the question is, how do we get some informed and diverse feedback other than, and it might be more appropriate, going back to the same people that you went to for interviews initially?
Yeah, well, it's a good point. It's always a challenge, of course, with any public process. And it really depends on the timing of the expectations for this project. I'm not sure if there's, you know, budget impacts and that sort of thing that we're thinking of in terms of scheduling, but it will be, as you mentioned, online, so anybody can review and provide input. So it doesn't, you don't need to attend the session physically to provide input, and there will be a document that can be reviewed and commented on. Typically, we provide a short survey with that as well. So as long as we can get the word out and people have access, to, of course, to a computer, they can provide input. So generally, I mean, we do a lot of these projects, and that's, you know, we provide as many different opportunities for people as possible. So, but you know, there's always a challenge with any type of time of year and any project in terms of getting as much input as possible. So, but we're willing to, you know, to adjust. We can work with staff to figure out what the best approach to that is.
You have a follow-up?
Yeah, I do. Just as a suggestion, can I ask that you email specifically those people that you interviewed and met with through your earlier data gathering process? Because I think, one, those will be the most informed and the most interested people. And so if we can at least get feedback from them, I think that would be worth the extra step of making sure they email them individually.
So we can certainly do that, and hopefully, if people have signed up for the online portal as well, then we will send an email blast through that as well. But we can follow up directly with those individuals as well, as you suggested.
Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, so I have two comments and concerns. When you look at the survey, the majority of the people are permanent residents. The majority of the residents within Trent Lakes are seasonal. So that kind of skews the survey. And I had a comment about the survey that open spaces, some people were confused about open spaces. They didn't know what open spaces meant.
Well, we can certainly provide a clarification on what we're referring to. I think when people have a document in hand, they'll probably it'll become more clear what that means.
I think it was when they just noticed the original document that said open spaces, and they said, what does that refer to? They weren't used to the term. They were used to beaches and trails and boat launches and all that sort of thing. If that had been in the heading, it would have given them more information and maybe a reason to fill out the survey.
My point of view is we have a lot of organized cottagers associations, road associations, and ratepayer groups. So we make sure that we get out and contact their executives so they can contact all of their people, so that we get a more of an input on the online stuff.
My comment would be, there's a new council coming in, 2 brand new members. And I think for the sake of holding it off for 5 or 6 months until we do get the people back together, I think it would be time well spent. Because this is going to have a big impact for a very, very long time. And I'm not sure that based on the comments I'm hearing and what I've heard here, that it's going to reach enough people quickly enough. The other thing that I was concerned about when I was interviewed was especially in trails, and that is parking. Now, it was referred here, but people need to understand that when you take a trail and you go to a trail here, that almost always you've got to drive a car to get there. So once you drive a car to get to that trail, you've got to have a place to put that car, or it ends up parked on somebody's private property that council then gets a call about saying, I can't get in my driveway because these people who are using the trail are blocking my driveway. So parking and trails, in my view, have got to be, they've got to go hand in hand. Councilor Armstrong?
Yeah, thank you. The second question was around where you are to date, although I want to make a comment first, and that is the survey response was disappointing. However, I think if you did review the first survey that the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Committee did, there were over 600 responses. And I think you get some very good data out of that in terms of usage and interest in boat launches, trails, et cetera. So I think we can still lean back on that. But my question is, nice to know all that you've done. It would be really interesting to hear some of your preliminary findings and directional kinds of messages that will go into your recommendations. I think we're all keen to see the draft recommendations because that's the expertise that you bring to this project, is that you've done this before, you understand how to do it. So I'm just wondering if you can give us even some teasers as to what your preliminary findings or, you know, directional recommendations are going to look like.
Yeah, well, we haven't, obviously we haven't run these by staff yet, so I'm hesitant to say too much, but I mean, generally we are looking at things like, there will be details on, say, trailheads. So we talk about parking and, the importance of that. So understanding that you need that infrastructure for, to allow people to get to the trail to park safely. Signage and wayfinding is another one that we will provide some recommendations on in terms of how to approach that as one of the, probably a spin-off project from this, because we won't be able to do a whole signage and wayfinding strategy as part of this plan, but that would be an important project for it, because one of the things we did hear from the public was that they're not aware of the trails, or they're not probably necessarily comfortable with them. So there needs to be resources available to the public so they know how to find the trails, what the level of difficulty is. So there would be that aspect, online information on finding the trails, that sort of thing. So, and that's common in a lot of communities where there just isn't that information available. So people aren't driving around the municipality and trying to find these trails. They want to be able to know where to go, what's available, how much parking is there, what's the level of difficulty, what are the rules around the trails. So, so that type of thing is one of those very important pieces. And then, recommendations on which trails could be upgraded or extended to connect a lot of these important locations within Trent Lake. So that's an important aspect of it as well that we need to look at. But a lot of it would be fairly aggressive. We're doing costing for them. We haven't done the costing yet, but understanding that it's going to have to be implemented over time. And it's not something that can be done in just 1 or 2 years. We're talking a long-term implementation strategy to see these connections realized over the long term. I don't know, Stacy, is there any tidbits any other tidbits that we should share in terms of?
We're looking at adding trails, where we can add trails, and also if there are municipal parcels that we can connect that might be vacant or might have had a prior industrial use that we can maybe take advantage of. But it's all preliminary, like Mike said. We're excited to dig deeper into those possibilities and create a more connected trail network.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Yeah, I think the amount of private land that is going to have to be transversed in order to make this connectivity a reality is going to be an interesting hurdle, because we don't have those swatches of lands to utilize. We've got pockets where people can have a trail connectivity, is another problem. I know the logistics at the end of it because we've done some of the trail systems through the county where they've had a lot of trouble keeping the ATVs and people that you don't want on the trails where you've got a trail and the next thing you know, you've got to put cement buttons up to keep people off the trail. And garbage and that kind of thing, but that's something that you just have to work with later. But the amount of private land that is going to have to be brought into this is going to be problematic. Okay, any other comments? Yes.
One comment in regards to that is we have every mile and quarter a municipal road allowance running north and south and east and west in this township. With water, they run into rocks, they run into bridges, so there's things that you can explore, but it's just an interesting add-on to what you're looking at for connectivity.
Okay, if we don't have any more comments or from council or from our presentator, could I have a motion to receive this? Deputy Mayor Windover and Councillor Frenzen, all in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, folks. Now we have a delegation from Julie Young regarding the Lakehurst Hall air conditioner. Please unmute your audio and share your camera. You will have 10 minutes. Are you there, Julie?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I've never been on this before, so I don't know how to use it, so I figured it out.
You're loud and clear.
Alrighty. I live next door to the Lakehurst Hall. The air conditioner unit is basically on the property line and it is very loud and disturbs us. It's continuously on. It runs continuously, it's very loud. It runs from May till September, pretty much day and night. I can't sit and enjoy my backyard. It keeps us up at night. It's hard for us to relax on our own property. 3 years I've been listening to it, even during COVID when the building isn't in use, the air conditioner was running continuously. It's not your typical residential air conditioning unit. It's very loud. I'm surprised that no one has come to even to see like how loud it actually is. My son can't open his window because in the cooler days or the first air because the air conditioner is very loud. I'm just wondering what we can do to resolve this issue.
Dylan, are you online? Calling all Dylans.
Hi, Janet. Sorry, through you, Council. I apologize if my connection is weak. I am out in the field today. With respect to the air conditioner, Council did once before receive this delegation and resolved to continue operations as it was. Staff have been out to site to measure the decibel reading of the air conditioner. It does appear to be within normal levels. However, I can appreciate Julie's concerns with the noise, and we have received quotations to move the air conditioner. We have talked with our HVAC consultant, and we have some less expensive options should the cost to move the air conditioner, which is approximately $3,000, be too much for council's appetite. There is some sound dampening blankets, as well as we are in the midst of installing a BAS system, which is a building automation system, exactly the same as what we have at the other community centers, which allows us to remotely control the HVAC system and allows for greater programming. Some of the issues surrounding the duration it is on, I believe, may stem from the board preparing for future events and attempting to cool down the building in time. If they're not able to be at the building closer to, I believe that may be left on longer than needed. However, if we, with this new system, we can pre-program it to exact days of the calendar year of their event. So, I believe that in itself will help quite a bit. Some other alternatives that could be done is we could build a privacy fence around it. Though for the cost and the being able to access the condenser itself, it might be more appropriate to just move the condenser down to the south end of the building. So it's it's really at council's discretion at this time on whether or not they would like to move the unit. But there's certainly a cost benefit decision to be made.
If I remember correctly, one of the reasons that it runs the way it runs is because the bottom part of that community center is very damp. And I think that was one of the things that was put in there, because it was kind of ahead of its time to put that much air conditioning in there. But it was a way to keep the mold out of there. So I'm not sure that it can be shut off and not get back into those same problems. Now, if there were a fence put around two sides of that, I know that's what we did with the heat pump that we were afraid was going to bother the neighbor, and it dampened the noise down a fair amount. Is that something that could be tried before there's a whole lot of money spent on this?
It certainly could be tried, Mayor. My worry is you may end up spending 25% of the cost just on the on the fencing of just moving the air conditioner in today's market. If you were to couple it with these new thermostats and perhaps a sound dampening blanket, you may achieve an agreeable result with the neighbor. But again, you may spend up to half of the cost of just moving the air conditioner down to the south end of the building, and it's more readily accessible for contractors on that end as well. So I mean, there's there are other benefits to that. If it was still too noisy down at the other end, we still have the option of putting a privacy fence there as well that would further dampen it. But in speaking with the contractor in the last month or so, they came out to look at the site. They felt that moving it down there would definitely cut the noise down drastically.
Is that something that the Youngs would be satisfied with, or would they, when they get it down there, move somewhere else? Councilor Francis.
Yeah, I was down at the site last week and I had a look at it, and it's very, very close to the property line and very close to the neighbors. And they have a sliding door on that end of the house. And I would support moving it, because I believe once you start putting fencing around it, you're going to be very close to $3,000 cost anyway. Because it's not a simple process. There's a lot of trees in that area.
For you, Mayor, I would add to Councillor Franzen's comment there that the fencing would have to be of an adequate standoff from the air conditioner for a technician to be able to service it. So we still would need 2 to 3 feet standoff from that unit for someone to be able to service it when required. And and then you are really truly getting very close to the property line.
Sorry, may I speak for one moment?
Sure.
Yeah, so him saying about the property line, like when people have to come in and service it, they're coming like basically into my backyard. There's also propane tanks there and windows that are open with people looking into my backyard. And there's a fence that comes to a certain point to the building. And then I just don't understand why the fence wasn't carried all the way down the property line.
Yes.
I can tell you why the fence wasn't carried down. They would have had to remove the trees and remove the stumps that are between the property line and the community center.
Well, should we leave this up to Dylan to, yes,
Yeah, thank you. I think I was going there. I'd like to make a motion to receive the report and to direct staff to come back to council with some alternatives and the costing associated with each of those related to this issue.
can we have a seconder to that? And that would be seconded by Councillor Franzen. All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, staff reports. We don't have any. Public works, none. Recreation facilities, none. Fire and emergency, none. Building and planning, Adele, Buffalo Bay plan, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Clarkson. This report is from Chris Jones, the external planning consultant, and it's for information purposes to identify that the municipality has received a decision from the Ontario Land Tribunal on October 26th with respect to the approval of an application for a plan of subdivision, common element condominium, and zoning bylaw amendment for lands known as Buffalo Bay. In accordance with the direction of the OLT, the municipal clerk has assigned a bylaw number to the approved zoning bylaw amendment, and further, the county will be addressing the plan of subdivision common element condominium. And that concludes the report.
Well done. Councillor Franzen.
Yeah, I have a couple comments. The zoning that's in that little map that shows the lots, I'd like to know what an EP4 zone, an EP4, and an EP5 holding, what restrictions that puts on those property owners, whether they can build docks, if they can build a gazebo within that area. What are the restrictions on that particular kind of zoning?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the zoning bylaw shows the details, and I'd be happy to provide a full copy of the bylaw itself. And I'm just looking, there is a holding provision for the shoreline residential private access 109 zone. And under the EP protection, I'm just trying to look what's permitted in that zone. It only says for the EP-4, you can construct a private road as part of the condominium element block. And the EP5 zone, it says you can use any land, alter, erect, or use any building or structure with the exception of alterations necessary to accommodate a docking facility and boat launch. And it talks about a docking facility shall be permitted on crown lands covered by water, which are adjacent to land zoned EP-5. And it's very detailed because it talks about not encroaching beyond the straight line projection of the interior lot lines of land zoned EP5 or block 4. So it is very detailed, and I don't know, Councillor Franzen, if I emailed you a copy of the full bylaw.
If you could email, I would say the incoming council about what restrictions are on that land. I understand talking to the neighbors that that would be affected by this development. They're very concerned about the environmental impact that these homes are going to be having on Buffalo Bay. It's an environmentally sensitive area. I mean, there's lots of ducks, there's lots of geese, there's turtle habitat, a lot of species that are at risk. I'd just like to make one comment. I'm disappointed in this decision, and it seems like development trumps the environment every time.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, and to you, Madam Mayor. I'm just not being familiar with many OLT decisions. My question is kind of broad. I guess it's, what are the implications at a high level for municipality? And are there any penalties that are assessed to us as a result of the OLT's decision? And if that's even a reasonable question.
Through you, Madam Mayor, typically in the OLT decision, if there are any costs to be awarded, say to the municipality or to someone who's doing the appeal of a bylaw, that's usually noted. So nothing was noted in this decision, so there aren't any costs awarded. And I'm also noticing on the EP-5 zone, it is subject to a holding provision. So there's certain requirements that are built into the bylaw that was approved by the OLT to protect those environmental protection lands.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I think when we get a decision like this, that's our signal to let this move forward. You could use this as a way to stop all lakeshore development. And I think by the time they get the permits to do all of the different things it will do, I think what Councillor Franson's concerned about, most of that will be taken care of. So I don't have that same type of concern. Councillor Franson?
I have long-term concern because with these restrictions, they may go to minor variance committee 10 or 15 or 20 years from now, get permission to build a gazebo, get permission to build docking, and it'll have a terrible impact on the environmental nature of this waterfront. And it's barely waterfront. I mean, it's almost a small. But I would make a motion to receive the report, and I don't want to pursue it, but I want to understand what kind of environmental protection there is in this area. So it'd be very helpful if Adele would email me that.
Okay, so can we get a seconder for this? And then I would like a recorded vote, please. So the seconder is Councillor Ramsay. Yes.
Madam Mayor, can you read the motion, just so we know what we're voting on?
That council received the report from the planner regarding OLT decision Buffalo Bay plan of subdivision condo and zoning bylaw amendment for their information.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Clarkson, are you in favor?
No.
Councillor Franson?
Yes.
Councillor Lansett?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Windover?
No.
Councillor Armstrong?
Yes.
And that motion has carried. Now, for legal, when the OLT decision has been made, do we have any risks of going against it? Because is that not why we go to these appeals in the first place? Adele, can you speak to that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, when the OLT deals with a zoning bylaw amendment or any kind of planning approval, their decision is final. So there is no recourse by council to appeal anything that the OLT decides. And I think because this was a high profile zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of condominium, what I'll do is I'm going to have it posted on our website so the public is aware of it. And I'll also include the zoning bylaw that was approved by the OLT so the public can get some further information, and I will circulate all of council with my findings of the zoning bylaw amendment approved.
But having said that, does this motion that we've not passed contravene the decision of the OLT?
No. We just made a motion to receive it.
Just receive it.
Okay. All right. Just so long as we're not setting ourselves up for
Litigation.
Okay, Adele, Removal of holding provisions for Empire Fuels. Finally,
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, British Empire Fuels have fulfilled the condition of entering into an amended site plan agreement dated October 12th, 2022. This agreement addresses the installation of an additional bulk propane storage tank together with accessory infrastructure, 10 parking spaces for service vehicles, and a stormwater management infiltration basin to the rear of the existing administrative building. Therefore, it's being recommended that council receive this report from the planner regarding the removal of a holding symbol for the land addition to the existing operation of British Empire Fuels, and further that council support the approval of a bylaw to remove the holding symbol for these lands, which is on today's council agenda for consideration.
finally. Okay, can we have a motion, please? Okay, and the seconder for that is Councillor Lambshead. All in favor? Thank you. That motion has carried. Now, hopefully they can get the base in before it freezes too hard. Sarah, Junior Planner, consent application 9522 for a new lot.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. On today's agenda, there is a municipal appraisal form for consent file B-95-22, submitted by agent Mike Mitchell on behalf of the property owner Neil Curry. The subject land is located at 48 Huntsline Road, and the applicant submitted an environmental impact study in support of the application to create a new building lot. Staff have reviewed the application and recommend that council supports the consent application subject to the following conditions. $1,000 cash in lieu of parkland fee be paid to the municipality. 2, a rezoning of the severed parcel be undertaken to the satisfaction of the municipality. 3, that an agreement be entered into between the applicant and the municipality and registered on title at the applicant's expense, which would address the recommendations of the environmental impact study. 4, the owner's solicitor provides an undertaking to the municipality of Trent Lakes that the site plan agreement required in condition 7 of the MAF be registered within 90 days of the issuance of the certificate. And 5, that if the reference plan confirms that any portion of the traveled road is located on the severed lot, the lands occupied by the traveled road, including additional land measuring 10 meters from the center line of the travel road, be transferred to the municipality as a road dedication. Thank you.
Hey, it's my neck of the woods.
Okay.
Comments?
I would like to make a motion to support this.
That is, so Councillor Lambshead has made the motion and it is seconded by Deputy Mayor Windover. All in favor? Motion has carried. Okay, now we're doing 1/2022 for an addition to the lot, please.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. On today's agenda, there is a municipal appraisal form for consent file B-120-22, submitted by owners Douglas Malcolm Dixon and Wendy Claire Dixon for a lot addition of Fire Route 78. The subject land is located at 8 Fire Route 78, and a greenhouse structure and a parking area for the greenhouse business currently appears to encroach onto the benefiting lot. The severed parcel must be rezoned to establish consistent zoning, and the retained parcel must be rezoned to recognize the greenhouse business. The zoning amendment may also be required to recognize the rear setback on the retained lot from the new lot line. Staff have reviewed the application and recommend that council supports the consent application, subject to the following conditions. 1, that a rezoning of the severed parcel be undertaken to the satisfaction of the municipality. 2, a rezoning of the retained parcel be undertaken to the satisfaction of the municipality. 3, that the solicitor for the applicant is to provide an undertaking in writing which confirms that the lands are being conveyed to an abutting property owner and a merger of title shall take place. 4, the applicant removes all buildings and structures encroaching onto 9 Fire Route 78 from the greenhouse operation at 8 Fire Route 78 in a manner that is compliant with interior side yard setbacks in the rural residential zone. 5, that the benefiting lot obtains a cancellation certificate to facilitate a legal merger of the severed lot. And 6, that the existing mutual access must be confirmed to have a registered easement in favor of the retained lot. Thank you.
Now, if I'm hearing right, this does not interfere with what they're doing. It just makes what they're doing legal. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is currently a large greenhouse that encroaches in on the other property. And as part of this consent agreement or consent application, we ask that all the structures encroaching in on the neighboring, the benefiting lot, in this case, be removed.
What type of an effect is that going to have on their business?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I did discuss this with the property owner while I visited the site to see the extent of the greenhouse's encroachment, and they had informed me that they were looking to downsize or decrease the amount of product they were producing per year, and that a removal of the greenhouse would be in their in an offer. They would be willing to do that.
So is that the greenhouse that's in at the rear of it, so at the farthest away from the road, set back?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. No, this greenhouse is on the front property. There, it's leading into Buckhorn there. You really can't miss it if you look. If you're coming out of Buckhorn going north and you look over to the right, it's right there.
Okay, because they have just vinyled that building within the last 2 weeks.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I don't know what the extent of the revinyling is, or I'm not participating in that. All I know is what the applicant had discussed with me. I believe his name was Douglas, the individual who met with me on the lot.
Okay, questions from council? Yes.
I'd like to make a motion in support of the staff recommendation with, I believe, 4 conditions.
Second that with the 6 conditions.
Or 6 conditions.
Okay. Recorded vote, please.
Mayor Clarkson, are you in favor?
No.
Councillor Franzen?
Yes.
Councillor Lancer?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Wendover?
Yeah.
Councillor Armstrong?
Yes. Okay, the motion has carried. Okay, consent application 12622, 12722, right of way.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. On today's agenda, there's a municipal appraisal form for consent files B-12622 and B-12722, submitted by agent David Bruce Thomas on behalf of the property owners Hegop Jacob Terzian and Anna Marie Terzian. The subject lands are located at 28 Fire Route 360 as well as 20 Fire Route 360. The application would authorize a registered easement over private lands, which have been utilized as a means of private access for many years. Benefiting lands are currently zoned shoreline residential private access, which reflects that they do not have frontage on the public road. Staff have reviewed the application and recommend that council supports the consent application. No conditions are being brought forth by staff. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, comment.
I'm just make a motion to support this. This just makes sense so that people in behind get access to the property that's legal and conforming.
Okay, and seconded, all in favor, motion is carried. Transfer of easements to David Thomas. Jesse, you're going to speak to this one.
Thank you. So this report is from the same residents as the previous consent application, and it deals with a municipally owned parcel of land. And the report on the agenda provides background information on the Registry Act and the change to the Land Titles Act and how many rights of ways were impacted during this transition. And David Thomas discovered the right of way for himself, and 3 neighboring cottage owners had not been brought forward into the new land titles registration system in order to legally access their properties. So they're going through this consent application, as well as requesting that the municipality sign new transfers of easements in order to rectify it. And as David Thomas is a semi-retired real estate lawyer, he was able to prepare the documents at his own cost. So in order to complete this, the municipality will be required to execute the transfer easement. So staff are just recommending that council authorizes the mayor and clerk to execute any documents necessary to effect the transfer of the easements.
Okay, motion. Deputy Mayor Windover has made the motion, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. All in favor? Motion is carried. Donna, have you spent all our money yet?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Thank you.
You just bought a cake. That's true. I hope it was accounted for properly. Thank you.
So before you is the accounts payable for your information for the months of September and October.
Thank you. Motion, please. Councillor Franzen and Councillor Lamson, all in favor?
May I make a comment?
No.
Okay.
Yes. Gotcha.
Yeah, if I'm reading this right, first of all, it's great that we've migrated most of our vendors to electronic payments. But if I'm reading this right, there are about 30 or 40 checks that were written to municipal planning services. Chris Jones. Can we not find a way to persuade him to go electronic? I mean, it's just stupid to write 40 checks to the same company. Now, I'm not begrudging him the money, but I just think there ought to be a way to persuade him.
Well, thank you, and through you, we can attempt to do that. For clarification, some of those checks, there are several invoices associated with the check, so there wouldn't be 40 checks. There could be 10 invoices on one check, but you're right, it would be better to have electronic files for it.
It just really stands out.
Yeah, for sure.
And my pet peeve is how much of this can be done in-house that doesn't have to be forwarded to Chris Jones in the first place. That's my pet peeve. And that's for the next council to do. Can we have a motion to
All in
accept?
favor?
You can-
All in favor?
all in favor.
That motion is carried.
That motion is carried. What do you say? You didn't
You're
have
on
the
that
motion in
one.
the
No,
first
you're on
place?
that one. Yep.
Okay, 2023 OPP billing statement.
Right, thank you, and through you. So we have now received the 2023 billing statement from the OPP. And you will see, as in the report, that the estimated cost is $1,591,846, which is $223.39 per property. But there is also a reconciliation amount for 2021. So the grand total will be $1,607,232. That is a reduction from 2021, which is a good thing, in recognition that it is still a large sum of money. So we do have 7,126 households included in this billing, which is an increase of 28, and 27 of those are households, and 1 is a commercial or industrial property. So the draft budget contains the amount of the billing for 2023, and I have provided council with the backup and the schedules for that.
Thank you, Donna. And for the council that are coming in, we are still dealing with the fact that the seasonal campers are being considered households. So we collect how much per unit? $135, something like that. And OPP is the full assessment as if you had a full house there. So somewhere along the line, the seasonal campers have got to be taken away from the OPP. And I brought that up at the meeting the other day, and Chris basically said, you're right, it drops it at that. Go ahead.
No, thank you. Yeah, there are, the billing is per property, and there are assessments included in there for all of the trailers, but it is per property. So,
So the numbers of trailers that get their individual taxes, we are assessed as if they were a homeowner. But what they pay in taxes is a fraction of what a homeowner actually pays. It's a problem.
If I may, I think we brought this forward as a delegation. And there is some sort of rebating that takes place in the background for trailers, so that we're not paying the full price. I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but we were totally shot down when we brought that delegation forward based on what the methodology actually is. So I think we need to understand just how that billing methodology works before we go forward.
Well, but I guess what I'm saying is going forward, it needs to be understood. Because if in fact it is the way I understand it and the way Chris understood it, it's problematic. So what they're doing in the background is interesting, but I'd like to know what that background figure actually is. Because we have about the highest unit of mobile trailers. And the trailers, like those trailers in where 6 Foot Bay are, people are paying $450,000 for a trailer. And the assessment that we get on them is about $150, something like that. Where if you had that house, can you imagine what you would be getting? But the OPP charges are the same. So it's a problem. Yes, Tom?
so just to clarify through you, the funding that Councillor Armstrong is speaking of is the OMPF funding. So the same household count is used in order to give the municipality the annual grant. That household count number, we receive an amount per household for that grant.
So that's for everybody, not just to make up the difference between the season.
Right, that's.
Yeah.
The
So that's
household
not-
count.
So that's not addressing this problem because that's given to everybody.
It depends on through the number of households.
Right. So some of it's smoke and mirrors. For sure. Anyway, motion to receive that report. Councillor Franzen and Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor? Motion is carried. Surplus funds to reserves.
Thank you, and through you. Before you is the request to transfer any surplus funds from the 2022 budget into reserves for future use.
Councillor Ramsay and Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? Motion is carried. Administration. And Ruth, where are you? Council expenses.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Clarkson. This report brings forward council expenses submitted for the months of September, October, and November 2022, and the remainder of expenses submitted for the month of August for council's consideration and approval. It should be noted that with the term of council coming to an end, early submission was requested for all outstanding council expense claims for the remainder of the term. As such, expense claims for October and November may include forecast expenses estimated to the end of term being November 14th. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion, please.
Motion to approve.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lamsey, Councillor Franzen, all in favor. Motion has carried. Jesse, sale of unopened road allowance to Hannah.
Thank you. Through you, at the September 6th regular meeting of council, council directed staff to proceed with the application from Patty Hannah to purchase the unopened road allowance adjacent to their property. A notice was circulated in accordance with the disposal of real property policy. This morning, staff received a call from the landowner to the south of the unopened road allowance who is interested in purchasing half of it. Staff are requesting the council defer this report in order to give staff an opportunity to discuss this proposal with the applicant.
Motion to defer, asked for. Okay. Thank you. And seconded by Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor. Thank you. That was Councillor Lamsey. Okay, unopened road allowance for Dance and Daly.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Clarkson, Susan and Peter Dance and Linda and Raymond Daly are requesting to purchase the unopened road allowance adjacent to their properties. Their intention is to each purchase 33 feet of the road allowance to add to their respective properties. The sale of this unopened road allowance would be in accordance with the policy, as the road allowance does not provide an existing or potential public access to a lake, and is not necessary to accommodate future transportation needs, as the Director of Public Works has indicated that due to the topography of the land and the environmentally sensitive areas, it would not be feasible to connect Elbow Point Road and LaFlance Road using the two portions of the unopened road allowance. Therefore, staff are recommending that council receive the report, support the application to purchase the unopened road allowance from the Dances and the Dailies, and that council direct staff to proceed with the application process and advise the applicant they will be responsible for all costs.
Okay, do we have a motion? Deputy Mayor Winberg, Councillor Franzen, all in favor? Motion is carried. Correspondence for information. We've got a bunch of them here. Does anybody want to pull any of these out?
I've got a couple that I'd like to take out.
Okay,
The one is Municipality of Blossom, and that's regarding the resolution regarding Ontario Wildlife Damage Compensation Program. I think that they have to review the charges. I believe the municipality gets $50 for the administration fee, and I think in today's world, $50 wouldn't even compensate 10 minutes of our staff's time.
so this is to damage of like sheep and everything by one.
By wildlife.
Okay,
They just have to review the whole program,
Right.
because I think the costing is up.
okay, so we've got a motion to support the municipality of Blossom. Do we have a second for that? I'll second. Go ahead.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor? Motion is carried. And the second one?
The second one was dealing with the extra powers of the mayor, the municipality of South Huron, I mentioned. And they're opposed to that, the change. And there's a bunch of municipalities. We've got municipality of Wawa, we've got West Perth, we've got Mattawa, a whole bunch of them. And I agree that this here strong mayor proposal, or what the province is planning to bring in, would dramatically change how municipal councils would be constituted, and I think there's too much power in one position.
It's not necessary. We're not going to ask the upcoming mayor what he thinks.
Oh,
You can ask them.
You can ask.
I've asked them.
Don't want any part of that. I think that it's circumventing the necessary 5-man person council, or the 3 or 7. You need to have a decision of 5 or 6 people. You don't have a decision of 1 to circumvent a system. I think that's wrong, and I think we should not be supporting that.
Step in the wrong direction.
Yes. Yep.
So unanimously, we're supporting that.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you.
And through you, Mayor, I would like to take 11.3 out of that, which is the Honorable Michael President, the Solicitor General, and our response to our AMO delegation. We have yet, during that delegation, we had a very good communication with both Honorable Michael Kressner and the Ontario Fire Marshal, and they were supposed to get a hold of our fire chief, and that has yet to happen. So I would like to have the municipality send a letter back to both Michael Kressner and the Ontario Fire Marshal, asking them what timelines do we have, because this is about certifying our firefighters, and many of our firefighters may decide just to quit because this is a long and onerous adventure that they're on, and I think we need to get some information going back and forth between the fire marshal and our chief.
Plus the fact that he assured you you would get it.
Yeah, both.
Okay,
I would certainly
Support
like to, I'd certainly like to second that, because I was in the meeting with Terry, so.
so all in favor? Motion is carried. Bylaws, Jesse,
I'd
yes,
like to make a motion to accept the rest of the information items.
that would be good. All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, Jesse, you're going to speak to some bylaws?
Thank you. Yes, there's just one bylaw on today's agenda that didn't have a corresponding staff report or public meeting, and that's bylaw B 2022-101. And it's to repeal the appointment of Dave Wellman, as he will no longer be able to work for the municipality.
Okay. And so we don't need a motion. Okay, removing of the holding provisions for British Empire fuel. Motion, please. Councillor Franzen and Deputy Mayor Window, all in favor. Motion has carried. Repeal of appointment for bylaw for Dave Wellman. Okay, Deputy Mayor Windover and Karen Lumsden, all in favor. Motion is carried. Official plan amendment 60. Motion, please. Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Lamstead, all in favor. Motion is carried. This is arising out of a previous meeting, and I have a notice of motion, so I'm going to remove myself from the chair. Would you like to read this? Do I read it?
You read it, you're reading the motion.
Okay, I'll read it now.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas the Santa Claus Parade was very successful in its first year, and whereas the second year will be much better, and whereas the parade has great economic value to the municipality, and whereas it attracted people from very large distance, therefore the Lions Club is asking for support and a $500 donation for decorations and promotion. Now, some of the promotion is for the sign in Buckhorn because we had an interesting relationship with the person who had the sign before, and he didn't charge us, but he sold the business. So now we're being charged. So now I step away.
Well, you're not the chair. Ron's the chair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
So, well, so you got that. So any comments?
I would make a motion that we support the Santa Claus Parade and try to find somewhere out of Donna's pocket that we can get the $500.
Before she transfers it all over.
Yeah,
Okay. Anyone?
I'll second it.
Carrie, okay, all in favor?
May I
Sorry.
just wonder if we could ask Donna if there's money left in either the mayor's budget or a relevant expense?
Thank you. Through you. There isn't in the mayor's budget, that was donated, but the council advertising budget does have $533 left. So you could use those funds.
Sure. Okay.
And you got $33 left.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
all in favor? Approved. Okay, good.
And I have to compliment staff for the help that they're giving us because it is not an easy process. The fire department has to be involved, the works department, EMS, like it really is way beyond the days where you had a parade and people took a walk down the street. So I certainly thank the people who have supported it. Information items, liaison reports from external boards. Anybody got something you want to bring forward?
I've got something I'd like to bring forward. First of all, I would like to thank council for allowing me to fulfill Kim's, the remainder of Kim's 2 years. Without, I thoroughly enjoyed the last 2 years, and without serving on council for these 2 years, I would not have run in the last municipal election. And I want to thank council very much that you put faith in me that I could fulfill Kim Reddle's term.
It's been an honor serving with you.
Yep, you earned it.
Just one other comment. Remembrance Day in Kinmount is on the 11th at 11 a.m. So anybody that's interested in attending Remembrance Day.
And the one in Curve Lake is the same time. And I've been asked to put a wreath there in representing the municipality, so I will be doing it. I think it'll be my last official thing we do.
I'm planning on putting the wreath in Kinmount.
Good.
I've already contacted the leadership.
Good.
Excellent.
Okay, we have to go into closed. So council is going into closed to discuss personal matters about identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees and labor relations or employee negotiations. Anyone that is listening or viewing the electronic meeting may remain on the line until when council rises from closed session. We need a motion to go into closed. Councillor Armstrong and Deputy Mayor Window, all in favor. Motion is carried. Okay, we're gonna get a motion to rise from closed. Deputy Mayor Window. This is the last time you're gonna get to say this. And seconder, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor? Motion is carried. We're gonna rise from closed. Oh, you're back. Oh, we just did that one. All right,
I want to wait for the last time to adjourn.
all right, all right. You're gonna have to fight me for it.
Oh.
Okay, adoption of the minutes for regular closed meeting of October the 4th.
Make that motion.
Okay, that's Counselor, whatever his name is. Lambshead. What's his name? And the seconder would be Counselor, who's it? Thanks, Carol. All in favor? Motion is carried. Motion to approve the confirming bylaw. Counselor Franzen, Counselor Armstrong, all in favor? Motion is carried. Motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Window.
There you go. We are adjourned.
And we are adjourned.
I think the mayor should second that motion.
I will second that motion.
Lovely.
Lovely.
All in
And
favor?
I would like to say, I think we're leaving things in good hands. I'm pretty sure there are people at this table who are more skilled than I at this stage of the game. And I think some of those people are taking the reins. So I appreciate the opportunities that I've been given. And, you know, for people who have said to me, how do you feel about leaving? I couldn't feel more positive. I'm not one of these people that say, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I know exactly what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I'm going to drive you crazy.
We go be a vet.
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor? Motion is carried.